It's tea time. So who's the maddest hatter of them all? Let's play hardball. Good evening. I'm Chris Matthews up in New York. Leading off tonight, boiling hot tea. The fire on the right to consume Mike Castle and threatens Democrats in the fall is now beginning to burn Republican bridges. In the last 2 days, Mike Castle blamed his loss on lies by Sean Hannity and Rush Limbaugh. Karl Rove dismissed Christine O'Donnell as a loser. Sarah Palin and Rush went after Rove. The Tea Party has a seat at the Republican table, but the knives are out. Let's start with the fire on the right. Time Magazine's Mark Halpert's a senior MSNBC political analyst, and Time Magazine cover this week, by the way, is it's Tea Party time, and Josh Marshall of the highly distinguished Talking Points memo joins us. Josh, thank you for joining us. You're sitting right here. Don't pretend I'm not here. Anyway, Karl Rove, Rush Limbaugh, and Sarah Palin played out the Republican Party split over Christine O'Donnell. Let's see it. It's all come to a head so soon. It's only September, and look at the sparks fly. It started with Rove's skepticism, you might call it, towards the victory by Christine O'Donnell Tuesday night. Let's listen to this strange fight.
Some of these good old boys, and I have nothing against Karl Rove personally, you know, he's the expert. But, Bill, some of these folks, they are saying that people like Christine O'Donnell and others, Tea Party Americans, can't win because they don't want them to win.
There are just a lot of nutty things she's been saying that just simply don't add up to it.
Everybody I know that saw this was just... They were perplexed. They couldn't figure what's going on. Why is he so mad at a Republican?
I endorsed her the other night. I said, I'm for the Republican in each and every case. I mean, I was one of the first to do it. And look, I'm also helping her. I've gotten so many people have written me an email saying, I'm irritated with you saying what you said the other night. I'm giving her a campaign contribution.
Mark Halpert, that is the fastest I've seen a guy stuffed at the basket there. Karl Rove, the architect of the erstwhile not well-built Bush machine, is now admitting he was wrong within, 24 hours? He's been croaked here. What's going on here? Can't Karl Rove speak anymore? Or in the Republican Party, must you obey the Tea Party now?
Well, let's try to break down, though, what his objection and a lot of other prominent Republicans were worried about if she became the nominee. They're not saying her views are too extreme. Karl made it clear in that first interview. He thinks her views are fine. They're worried about two things. They're worried about the personal baggage she has and what they believe is a character problem will make her unelectable. They don't want, as a matter of realpolitik, to lose the seat. I think the problem is a more cultural one. There are people in the Tea Party and in the conservative movement whose attitude is if someone is against the establishment, we're for them.
Right.
And if anybody criticizes them, they're criticizing the heart and soul of the movement. That is a cultural and kind of psychological problem that I think Karl misplayed, and that's going to be a challenge for the Republican Party, I don't think between now and the midterms, but certainly beyond in governing and then looking towards the presidency.
Well, what's the cultural problem of Karl Rove? Let's continue the psychobabble on both sides. Why is an establishment figure like Karl Rove, who makes money doing this, talking about politics, why is he so angry at her for winning? She wins the nomination. At that moment forward, he should have been supportive of her. What did anybody gain from him dumping on her after she won? That's what I don't get.
It was a mistake, but I think, and Karl basically said this in a subsequent interview, Karl's an analyst now for Fox News. He was wearing his hat that's about zeros and ones. Are we going to win this seat or not? And I think his point was we just failed to nominate someone who would definitely win the seat. Democrats were going to give up on that race. Now we've nominated someone who almost definitely, from Karl's point of view, will lose the seat. And I think he was being an analyst rather than doing what he should have done, which is to say she won. Isn't it great? A new young voice in the party, even if that doesn't mean he thought she could win.
You know, in my favorite movie, Josh Marshall, Lawrence of Arabia, the Arabs win, and we're all rooting for them in this, although we'd be considered them terrorists today, of course, beating the Turks. They all get to Damascus, and the minute they get to Damascus, they start fighting each other with knives.
Right.
I mean, that's what they haven't won yet. It's not November yet. They're already fighting with each other.
Well, you know, the Republicans are falling apart to victory. You know, it's a funny kind of thing. I think the thing is, I actually disagree with Mark. If you look at that first interview that Rove did, there was more than just analysts there. It wasn't just him saying...
Why is he angry?
He's angry because he's a professional. He does this for a living. He likes winning elections. And he sees someone like her, frankly, as an amateur. If you look at that first interview, there was something denigrating. By
the way, that's what the Tea Party people love to hate.
Absolutely.
The big shots telling them they're amateurs, even though they're voters.
Absolutely. And I think if you look at what he said, he talked about what he called her character issues, you know, things nutty things that she'd said. I think someone like Rove, He doesn't want a Republican like that, even if there were no character issues, doesn't want a Republican like that running in Delaware, because he wants to win elections.
So she's fair game.
Yeah, until he went through 24 hours. Yeah, 24 hours of getting whacked.
Let's go to Congressman Mike Castle. Let him speak for himself. Here's the guy that lost narrowly the other night to O'Donnell. He lays blame for his loss to radio. Here he is nailing who he thinks are the bad guys. I love this fight. It's a circular firing squad on the right. Let's listen.
I think the misrepresentations, the lies of Sean Hannity and Rush Limbaugh on the air were another very significant part of all of this. I think some of the misrepresentations in my opponent's race were a part of it as well.
So that's what it takes for a Republican to tell the truth about the radio boys. Just think about it on television, boy. Just think about it, Mark. You don't say a word against these guys with the microphone until you lose.
Well, Chris, who are the two other people in the party who have told the truth along the lines of Mike Castle? Senator Bennett, who lost his race in Utah and talked about the dangers of the Tea Party to the Republican Party, and then Congressman Inglis in South Carolina. Both of them, incumbents, lost their nomination fights, and they've spoken out in a way different than everybody else. The Republican Party is lucky. What's animating the Tea Party, talking about the economy and spending in Washington, is the exact issue that is the winning issue for the mainstream party, the establishment party. As long as they can be talking about that, then they're fine. That's why what Karl did and what other Republicans did in criticizing O'Donnell was a huge mistake. It created all this dialogue about a fight within the Republican Party rather than the president's record on the economy.
You know, this looks like a fight, and tell me if I'm wrong. You know your stuff, Josh. You do. I respect you a lot. If you look forward now and just project this writ large, to use a fancy expression, Mike Castle versus Christine O'Donnell, okay? Mitt Romney versus Sarah Palin. How are the Tea Partiers going to say, oh, well, this is really important, the presidency. I wouldn't want one of us being president. At one point, are the big shots going to say, you guys aren't clean enough or sophisticated enough to be the leaders? We'll take your votes.
Right,
but none of you is going to get to be president. At what point does that clash occur?
I think what's going to happen is you're going to see this fight take place in 2011. And if 2011 goes something like 1995 went.
You mean the run-up?
When the radicals, kind of really discredited themselves with government shutdowns and all this kind of stuff.
I see.
When you get to 2012,
but doesn't Palin have to decide whether to run before then?
Oh, absolutely. I'm saying who's actually going to who's actually going to make it.
Mark, when's this going to happen? When are we going to see the Castle versus O'Donnell race writ large nationally between Palin and because it looks to me like the Tea Parties have already written off Mitt Romney. He's the original health care guy. He was the stalking horse for Obama. They're already nailing the guy. They're getting the help, by the way, of who's going after him. Oh, Palini's already going after him. Already saying, you're one of the rhinos.
Well, look, Chris, there's a cleave between the 7 people right now who I think can be the Republican nominee. You've got 3 people who are employees of Fox, Palin and Gingrich and Huckabee, and then you've got 4 governors or former governors, Pawlenty, Romney, Daniels of Indiana, and Haley Barbour of Mississippi. The 4 establishment figures all are going to have to, starting now, figure out how they deal with the Tea Party movement. And they're going to have to approach this race in a way that gathers the energy of the Tea Party movement the way they need it, but doesn't alienate the center. It's very analogous, though, Chris, before we get all apocalyptic about it, to what Republicans had to do in, say, 1996 with Bob Dole and the Christian Coalition and the evangelical movement.
Well, that worked out well, didn't it?
Well, but Dole got the support of Ralph Reed.
Yeah, he got 41%, too.
But, because he didn't do a good job of knitting it together. But his problem
because he didn't believe a word of the right-wing crap. He thought this whole supply-side stuff was a joke. He told endless jokes about it before he got the nomination. Then he had to pretend he believed it, and nobody believed that he believed it.
That's why I believe Gingrich had already discredited himself by that point to a great degree.
Yeah. Do you think that Romney's a credible Tea Party leader?
I think that's a big challenge for all of them. And he culturally, and I think in terms of performance, it's a real challenge for him. But he was the first out of the gate of the 7 people I named, as far as I know, to endorse O'Donnell. And I think you're going to see him, because he has been very nimble this year, more nimble than people give him credit for, in figuring out the right ways to try to build those bridges. But you're not going to beat Barack Obama if you are a Tea Party candidate. And in fact, when I talk to people around the president, the thing that gives them the most optimism about the long-term political future of the president is they believe that it is inevitable that the Tea Party will either nominate one of their own as the candidate to run against Obama in 2012, or that the person who wins will be so beholden to the Tea Party that they'll lose 40 states.
Why doesn't the president begin an attack through his people on Sarah Palin with the idea of boosting her up to the nomination? Was they afraid that in the end she could beat him?
Good question.
Because that's what you do. That's what Johnson did to Nixon.
Yeah,
build him up.
Well, look how well that worked out.
Yeah, it didn't work out too well. Johnson had to leave, and Nixon won.
Be careful what you wish for.
I love talking to people that know their history. This is really interesting tonight. So do we agree that the fight has begun between the regular Republican Party and the zoo stream, if you will, as they would see it? Your thoughts, Mark, because that's the way they look at them. They look at them as the slow kids in the class. That's their view of them.
There is a cultural and psychological divide that I think they will not bridge perfectly, but they will bridge enough to do smashingly well in the midterms. The peril for them is if they don't have leaders who can negotiate, not just for 2012, but for how to govern as part of a co-equal branch where they'll be in a majority. That is a real challenge. And right now, all they do, for the most part, until this O'Donnell thing, is kowtow to the Tea Party, and that is not a recipe for long-term success.
Can they get their support of people they look down on? Mike Castle looks down on Christine O'Donnell. There is no doubt about it.
You know, the most telling thing for me is the way that they have rolled big, not just establishment, but people who are the conservatives. It's not just the Mike Castles. Okay. It's the Karl Roves.
They go after her for not having her college degree. You know, every time you look at a poll, you can tell who's going to win. The people without college degrees tend to win.